Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Albany County Legislature's Law Committee. First item of business, can we take attendance?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Kuhn.
Here.
Feeney.
Here.
Alex. Here. LaRilliard.
Here.
McLaughlin.
Here.
Plotsky.
Here.
Ricard.
Present.
Bergdorf.
Here.
And Pearlie.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. First item of business is approving the minutes from our previous meeting. Can I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. As we often do, we're going to go a little bit out of order this evening. We're going to start with line item number 8, which is authorizing agreements with the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services, the District Attorney's Office, and the Sheriff's Office regarding the Stop Violence Against Women Act grant. Ms. Wingo.
Hi, everybody. Amanda Wingle, Director of the Crime Victim and Sexual Violence Center. I'm here tonight to request authorization to enter into a one-year contract extension with the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services to accept funding for our Stop Violence Against Women grant. It's $61,547, which will be used to support the salaries and fringe of our staff, as well as staff from the Sheriff's Office and the District Attorney's Office, to provide court advocacy services to clients, as well as Prison Rape Elimination Act services in the jail.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this line item? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion?
Motion.
Feeney? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, carries. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you
Have a
very
good
much.
evening. Okay, that brings us to, item number 2 is tabled at request of sponsor. Item number 3 is tabled at request of sponsor. Item number 4, local law number T for 2024, a local law of the County of Albany, New York, amending Chapter 288 of the Albany County Code, establishing a minimum passing distance for motor vehicles. Ms. LaRilliard.
Yes, hi. So, last evening, we had the public hearing. We had 3 speakers came in support of this minimum passing law, all recommending it strongly, looking at the number of crashes in the County of Albany, 2,100 from 2016 to 2024, 251 serious injuries reported, and also a really interesting statistic that New York there are 41 states who have minimum passing laws in the country to reflect the need for vulnerable road users and their safety, and we should join them, especially the county. So I would urge our support for this, moving this out this evening.
Great.
I have
Dr.
I
McLaughlin.
have a question, thank you. How do you measure the minimum passing of someone?
So that was brought up last night. It's more of an approximation. It's mainly educational. It's not taking a tape measure out there and saying you're not 3 feet away from that vulnerable road user. It was explained last night that from one of the speakers that 5 inches seems fine for one driver, but having a minimum of 3 feet is more educational, that you need to safely drive your car with a distance away from a vulnerable road user.
And this is done after an incident has occurred? I guess I'm just trying to visualize this, how you would see it prior to something happening, or is it something that is a part of the investigation after an incident has occurred? I mean, I'm trying to visualize how you ascertain whether somebody was 10 feet or 20 feet or 5.
So the intent is that when we're on the roads, that we acknowledge that there's vulnerable road users, that we take precautions where practicable to avoid hitting that person. So obviously, if you hit the person, that would be part of a crash investigation. Did you use due care to avoid that person and all of that? So I guess that would be part of an investigation. But it's really more the purpose of this is educational to give a guideline to the public as far as how to operate your vehicle safely on roadways.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question, I'm certainly supportive of this. Is there a plan to educate members of the public that this is now the rule, that this rule is being codified?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot of opportunities. I know the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee each year awards grants to local police agencies, including our own Albany County Sheriff's Department. And that could probably be part of a grant application for public education related to vulnerable road users. I know New York State DOT already has a program in the summertime to alert us with like signage on the side of the road, you know, those LED signs saying, watch out, you know, it's summer, road construction season, make sure you keep a safe distance from, you know, highway workers and things like that. So I think that could be a possibility. Like, right, and also the advocates there, thank you, Joanne. The advocates there last night were with the Albany Bicycle Coalition and the New York State Bicycle Coalition, and they actually will use this as part of an education campaign. I know Ed Brennan, who was there with the Albany Bicycle Coalition, he's involved in continuing education related to bike safety and things like that. So that's how I would envision it.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Burley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually opposed to this measure, and I'd just like to explain why. It certainly has nothing to do with anything against vulnerable road users. In fact, I love seeing the increased number of particularly bicyclists stop in my part of the county. It's a great thing to see, and it's actually a great measure of economic development in our part of the world. The problem I have with it is I think this is an example of a policy that would make sense and be an improvement in a certain part of the county, but because we are a big and diverse county, it may actually wind up causing some very significant negative consequences in other parts of the county. Where I live, if this sort of becomes the new norm, and I remember to a previous meeting, one of the members said, well, what we're looking to effect is a change in the culture in terms of motorists. Well, if the change of the culture is you have to move over, most of the roads in my part of the county are just 2-lane, one in each direction. So to move over to accommodate someone on the side of the road will necessarily mean crossing the line. And particularly right in my immediate neighborhood, there are so many curves, there are so many hills that crossing the line will cause a very significant safety hazard.
So I can respond to that. We actually included a provision in addition to the original legislation that was proposed, and it actually says if an operator of a motor vehicle does not have sufficient space to approach or pass a vulnerable road user at a distance of at least 3 feet, the driver must slow down and only approach or pass if it may be done safely and reasonably. So that is meant to address that issue that you raised, just narrow roads, highways that are marked with double yellow line. One of the other points that one of the speakers brought up last night was that there's great value with ecotourism, with bike ridership, and they explained that by ensuring that there are safe roads for bicyclists, that we will actually move up the list of favorable places to come and ride your bicycles for tourism and things like that. So hopefully that language will put your mind to ease.
Unfortunately, it doesn't, because I think the practical effect of it will be, particularly in the rural parts of the county, is people will cross the line. They won't slow down, they'll move over.
We have mail
Well,
trucks
hold on.
right now.
Let him finish and then you can respond.
Yeah, and living in the real world, living where I do, I just foresee a change in the culture being, well, I'm gonna get a ticket unless I swing out to avoid, to give this bicyclist room. That, you'll have vehicles crossing and they may not know that there's a curve ahead, and, you know, we just could be inviting, you know, really, really nasty collisions. And I may be particularly sensitive because I happen to live on a very curvaceous road, and I kind of figured out how would this be actually followed in real life circumstances, and it scared me. So as much, and again, I love the idea that we would move up in terms of our attractiveness for economic development purposes, but I just think if we do in fact effect a change in the culture, that change could have some serious and potentially deadly consequences. So I'm going to vote no.
Did you want to respond to anything more that Mr.
I
Burley
don't
said?
think so. I think the law addresses your concerns, and thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Bergdorf?
Yeah, I had originally argued against this because I was concerned about the impact in my district, where I have, for example, a lot of county roads that are 2 lanes, and the mail trucks go down there, and if you're following a mail truck down Old Niskayuna Road or Albany Shaker Road, and you couldn't pull over, and you had to pass a mail truck and wait for traffic not to be coming the other way, you could be stuck for hours. But then I went back and I looked at your language, and I felt more comfortable with it. And I also was more comfortable after talking to some law enforcement folks that I deal with about, at least I get the sense that in our town, nobody's going to be out there with a yardstick measuring people. And, you know, I hate to say that anybody thinks it's a law without consequences, but it is, I look at it as being a public education campaign more than an enforcement law. And then I also actually, I should be more observant, but on some of those major roads, I realized that they had bicycle lanes. So there is the 3-foot piece where a cyclist can go, and that may be the extent of what the shoulder is off the drive lane, but there is a mechanism by which traffic can flow, and I'm convinced, at least in our town, that there won't be any undue enforcement. And since they do 99% of the traffic work, et cetera, I do not have a problem with this as a, you know, we all got to have a better sense of keeping everybody safe.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, just one thing. I think that this is largely education. And I know the Bethlehem Bike and Ped Committee is very jazzed about this and will be doing its own education. I do think, to address Mr. Furley's comments, I regularly road biked a loop that included leaving Bethlehem and going out to Indian Letter Farms and then back. So I rode a lot of those country roads. You can always tell when someone is in the car that is passing you, whether or not they are a biker. Because you know what they would do? They would hang back if there was another car in the other lane, and when that car passed, they would loop around me, giving 3 feet or so. The same is true, I walk in Del Mar every single morning, and I do it during rush hour and during school bus time. And you can always tell when there is a driver that is very aware of pedestrian safety, because they do the same thing. They hang back if there's another car coming. It happened literally twice this morning. And I feel them, and they wait until the car passes, and then they give me a loop. There are other cars that I think they're going to hit my dog, quite honestly, because they are so close. And so I see the value of this being something that we will be able to urge the sheriff to get some grants. We can apply for grants. We can encourage all of these pedestrian and biking committees to publicize this. It kind of is a parallel to when you see the state trooper on the thruway. There is a law that says you're supposed to get in the other lane to pass the trooper in the opposing lane when they pulled someone over. And so, you know, does anyone get pulled over for that? Probably not, because the trooper's already pulling someone over. But looks like you've gotten pulled over for
Yes, I
that.
might have.
But the education is the value of giving space to safeguard someone's, someone's safety. And so I do see the value, just like Paul sees it, that, it's going to be a really useful tool that will enhance our walkability and our ability to have safer streets.
Okay, anybody else? Mr. Riccardi, do you have something to say?
Just a statement, actually, what Susan alluded to. I had a problem when this was originally presented in committee for some of the reasons that Mr. Curley alluded to, and Paul too. But I think the carve-out does address the situation well in Cohoes, because I've got a one-way street and other streets that are very narrow. It's difficult to pass, especially in the winter with snow and everything else. So I think the carve-out does address my situation in particular in Cohoes. So I do appreciate you willing to do that. So thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, someone want to make a motion?
I can make a motion.
Mr. Card, second by Ms. Plotsky. This is a motion to move it out with a favorable recommendation?
That's correct.
Okay. All in favor of moving out with a favorable recommendation? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that's 6 versus 1. 8 to 1? All right, so that motion carries. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to item number 5. I'm not going to read that long title, but I will throw it over to Ms. Lakakis.
It is the local law of the County of Albany, New York, amending 270 of them. It's about the hot tax and the short-term rental inclusion in the hot tax. And you have 2 versions there in your Granicus. The first has Susan Petto's name on it, so that'll give you the tip-off that that's the original one. And the new one has my name on it, so that will give you the tip-off that it's the most late one. However, we just got it back the other day, and we realized that we might still have a lot of questions on it, and it was a lot to take in for one time. So I am going to table it today, but what I would like is if you have any questions and you have time to read it, you please forward them to council, and we will get them answered for you before the next time around, so we don't have to wait again next time. And if in the course of working on a couple things that we don't feel are completely finished, we make a change, we'll share that information. Thank you for your consideration.
Great, thank you. So item number 5, table that requested sponsor. That brings us to items number 6 and 7, which, as the sponsor, I'm going to take out of order. I'm going to talk about item 7 first, which is a resolution of the County of Albany, New York, regarding operations of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and U.S. Border Patrol. There is, just people can, as I'm sort of giving my little spiel here, there were some thoughts that were shared with me about some potential changes to this resolution, which I don't have an objection to. They would have to be subject to a motion, but I'm going to circulate what is sort of a markup that if I would not have any particular objection to. Can you?
Yes.
There's 10 of those, so I might have given you guys more than you need. Keep them going around. I have 10 copies, so I'm keeping 1, so hopefully there's enough for everybody. Okay. The Trump administration has mandated that ICE and Border Patrol arrest at least 3,000 immigrants a day, and that does not count those apprehended at the border. That is more than 7 times the roughly 400 arrests per day during the first Trump administration. To accomplish that mandate, the Trump administration has transformed ICE into the nation's largest law enforcement agency. The so-called Big Beautiful Bill alone tripled ICE's annual budget with an appropriation of $75 billion over 4 years. With that increased budget, ICE hired massive numbers of new agents, but to meet the daily 3,000 arrest quota, ICE has had to deploy those new agents onto the streets very quickly. ICE thus created a crash course training program with agents originally only required to undergo 47 days of training, which was a nod to Donald Trump being the 47th president. And even that has now been reduced to 42 days. In comparison, Albany County Sheriff's deputies undergo roughly a year of training. ICE has cut the classes that teach the Constitution, our legal system, firearms training, the use of force, lawful arrests, proper detention, and the limits of officers' authority. Furthermore, in order to meet its daily 3,000 arrest quota, ICE has radically altered its tactics. Whereas ICE previously prioritized arrest and deportation of immigrants who posed a public safety or national security threat, ICE's mass operations now involve arresting nearly anyone officers think may be an immigrant, while their legal status is then assessed after they are taken into custody. The events in Minnesota earlier this year demonstrated that, given ICE's tactics and woefully undertrained agents, a mass deployment of ICE or Border Patrol in Albany County would be a direct threat to public safety and domestic tranquility, which brings us to Resolution 55. The resolution is about protecting public safety and the rule of law in Albany County. All county agencies, including the sheriff, will continue to comply with federal immigration law. However, ICE and Border Patrol are poorly trained, abysmally led, and have engaged in pervasive and seemingly systematic violations of the Constitution and other laws, including undermining due process, searching vehicles and homes without judicial warrants, attacking and arresting people exercising their First Amendment rights to assemble and protest, violating hundreds of federal court orders, and most disturbingly, unjustified uses of deadly force in the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. This resolution makes it clear that Albany County will not cooperate with any such lawless ICE or Border Patrol operations in our community. The resolution would prohibit the Albany County Sheriff's Office from entering into agreements under Section 287G of the Federal Immigration and Nationality Act that would require the sheriff's deputies to act as federal agents and use Albany County taxpayer funds to carry out federal civil immigration enforcement. The resolution would also prevent any Albany County property being used as a staging area for ICE or Border Patrol operations, including the kind of mass raids and neighborhood occupations that took place in Minnesota. And it also would prevent the Albany County Jail or any other county property from being used as ICE or Border Patrol detention centers. This resolution would have zero effect on the way the Albany County Sheriff deals with undocumented immigrants accused of a crime. Whenever the Albany County Sheriff arrests anyone, their name and fingerprints are sent to the FBI, which shares that information with ICE. If that person is in the Albany County Jail and ICE obtains a judicial warrant for their arrest, ICE can come to take them into custody. And as indicated in the resolution itself, if any undocumented immigrant is convicted of a felony, they are already handed over to ICE's custody upon their release under existing federal law. One final point. If anyone opposes Resolution 55 on policy grounds, so be it. But please do not assert that it violates the Supremacy Clause of the U.S. Constitution. Section 287G of the Federal Immigration and Nationality Act authorizes ICE to enter into agreements to delegate federal civil immigration enforcement functions to local law enforcement agencies, but Albany County is under absolutely no legal obligation to do so. And if the Albany County Legislature concludes, as I have, that ICE and Border Patrol employ such objectionable tactics and are so poorly trained that we will neither cooperate with nor facilitate their operations in our community beyond that which is required by federal law, we are perfectly within our rights to do so. With that, I welcome any questions or comments. All right. Mr. Bergdorf.
Sorry. First thing I had on my list was the privacy clause, but I guess the fact that immigration law enforcement is delegated to the federal government isn't important here in Albany County, because it's obvious to me that people do not want to enforce the immigration law. The law is what it is, and it was never changed during 4 years of the current opposition party when they had control of the White House and the House and the Senate. They never changed any of those laws. And it's kind of interesting, Obama, he deported some huge number, like 4,400,000 people. Bill Clinton deported 800,000 people, and Bill Clinton was the guy who signed in, I think it was one of the years that he was president, the law that allows for expedited deportations. So Trump's deported about 400,000 people so far. A great percentage of them are criminals. And none of this was a problem when Obama was deporting people. Had the same guy in charge, Tom Homan. He worked for Clinton, Obama, and now Trump. So I look at this as an act of political resistance that is part of Trump derangement syndrome. And I'll be very honest with you. You have made some things here. Training is abysmal. That's your opinion. Your opinion. Maybe the opinion of some news media. Other people suggest that it's not abysmal. You say that it's unconstitutional. Well, actually, all those most of the judicial mandates, which were not abided by the Trump administration, were ultimately found to be renegade district court judges that did not have the ability to control national enforcement. And it was thrown out by the Supreme Court. So that's questionable. And then we get into the long-held philosophical beliefs that law enforcement assists law enforcement. And I know that this is all about, we hate ICE. I get it, you know? I wish some of the things hadn't happened. But when, and I'm not going to try to defend them, but in Florida and in Texas and in North Carolina and in Tennessee, where they conducted these operations, where local law enforcement actually worked with ICE, you don't see any of these things that happened. There weren't, Minnesota is famous for orchestrated rage. They burnt down half of the city and much of the state in George Floyd. And they told the police to stand down. And, that seems to be their MO. But when law enforcement works with law enforcement, this does not happen. I'm going to give you a hypothetical, and you tell me whether it counts or not. Say ICE comes here, and they go to a community where the sheriff is the primary law enforcement entity. And there is an Albany ICE Watch that then responds with 100 protesters with bullhorns and baseball bats, and they're spitting on ICE officers and beating their cars and breaking taillights and obstructing ICE vehicles from even moving. And we call the Albany County Sheriff for police backup. Does the sheriff go? Is he assisting a federal operation, or is he assisting a law enforcement officer who is conducting legitimate federal business? Now, you may not believe that's legitimate federal business, but for the first time, we're going to have police officers ignore other police officers that are under attack when Molotov cocktails are flying and they're attacking federal buildings. I don't see that as what we want here. Now, you may not want any deportations, then change the law. And you should have changed the law if you felt that way. But, you know, everyone here took an oath to support the Constitution of the United States and the laws of the federal government and the state, not just the ones that you like. So, you know, there's really a question. It's really kind of interesting. We sit here and we say, it's unconstitutional. They're committing, you didn't use the word murder, but these are, you know, if you had somebody ramming a car against you, you might feel as though you were being harmed, especially if you've been dragged by a car 3 months earlier and 35 stitches and hospitalized for a week. So, you know, that's not a result of bad training, but if these people were home with their kids or had a job, they wouldn't have been in these positions. And, you know, there's nobody who is going to support anybody being shot. But anybody who goes, I'm not even going to get into that. But, you know, the judicial warrants. First of all, if there's a judicial warrant for a felony, nobody's in county court in the county lockup anyway, because if it's a felony and there's a judicial warrant, they're going to jail in a state facility because it's over a year. We don't hold people for under a year, so that's not really. And there's one exception in the language.
I hate to, I don't understand. You gotta say that again, because
Okay,
that made no sense to me.
I'll try to say that again. There were only 2 ways.
Do we have a time check, Mr. Chairman, on how long our committee member?
Okay,
is
I mean,
allowed
if
to
you want
speak?
me to stop, I'll stop.
Yeah, then
But
you
I'll
can
do it on,
speak
I'll
further
do it
now.
on the floor, or I'll do it later in time.
Well,
But
you'll
we-
get time checked on the floor as well.
We spent half an hour talking about credit cards and CDTA buses, but because this is something that you think is important, you don't want to hear the other side, and that's unfortunate.
Paul, you're being given every opportunity to speak.
Okay, well, no, I was.
Well, just keep going, just keep going, keep going.
Okay. So there are 2 things where you can turn somebody over to ICE. If there's a federal judicial warrant, or if they are a terrorist, okay? So if it's a head of a pedophile ring that does sex trafficking, you're okay with that. That illegal immigrant doesn't have to be turned over to ICE. No, seriously, you know, there are 2 things.
What are you talking about? What do you mean? I
Okay.
really don't want to get into a back and forth,
No,
but
no, no.
that
Where
doesn't
is-
make any
where's
sense
the-
what you're
where's the
saying.
language on this?
You're trying to ask about the probable cause.
Yeah, probable cause standard.
If somebody,
Yeah.
I don't want to prolong this.
We have,
If this person, in your inflammatory hypothetical, if there was evidence that they had committed the crime that you mentioned, they would be taken into custody for violating the penal law of the state of New York.
yes, and then
So-
under
so-
our payout standards, they would probably
Well,
be.
now you're going far afield.
Well,
They would be arrested. This has nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with your hypothetical.
I disagree with you.
Well, the words say what they say.
It says there are 2 exceptions. The sheriff from notifying immigration authorities in advance of an individual's release from custody without extending that individual's detention if 1, the individual has been convicted of a felony under the New York penal law. So you could have murderers and rapists in the Albany County Jail who are not convicted yet, and there could be illegal aliens who have committed murders in their home country, but now we've got to own them because you don't want to deport them. Well, that's what
You don't know what you're talking
about.
about, Mr. Bergdorf. If someone was accused of a crime, the crimes you're talking about, they're held in custody pursuant to New York State penal law. This would have nothing to do with that. It's not like, excuse me, if they were accused of murder and they were had been charged with murder, they would be held in custody as a murderer. This would have no impact on that whatsoever.
Do murderers ever get bail?
If they
People
get,
accused
I
of
will
murder.
answer that, I will answer that.
Because
If they,
it actually says
excuse me,
convicted of a
excuse me,
felony.
if they are given bail, they are released pursuant to the law that they were given. They cannot be held then, under current New York State law, if someone has been accused of a crime and they have been made bail and they are no longer being held because they've made bail, under the current New York State law, they cannot be held because of federal civil immigration enforcement issue. That is the law in New York State right now. So your hypothetical contradicts sort of reality and the current law in New York State, okay?
I'm not sure that I agree with you. I understand what you're saying, but I gotta tell you, according to the federal statute for expedited deportations signed by Bill Clinton as part of his criminal justice reform program, they are allowed to remove illegal aliens under an expedited basis, and this, in my opinion, is an attempt to circumvent that and to take over the primacy of federal immigration law. And, that's what I believe.
Okay, I think we should let somebody else have an opportunity to speak.
I've had sort of my say.
Yep,
and-
okay. Does anybody else have anything they want to say? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not a member of the committee, but I do appreciate the updates that have been made.
Okay,
to
hold
the
on one
language.
second then, I'm
Yep, if
sorry.
you have committee
Is there any
members.
other members of the committee who want to opine or comment on this? Okay, by protocol,
Yep.
Mr. Perlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a conservative, the Constitution means a great deal to me. Constitutional rights mean a great deal to me. I've spoken on the floor about my particular concern for constitutional rights, and I've shared with you some of my concerns of what I've seen happen in some of our major cities relative to a lack of regard for constitutional rights. But I think that even though it was struck from this most recent version, I think sort of the spirit of this particular measure can be found in one of the whereas clauses. It said, whereas the continued presence of ICE and Border Patrol, yada, 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 serves no legitimate governmental or law enforcement purposes. I can't bring myself to agree with that kind of a statement. I think there are very legitimate governmental purposes in the enforcement of our immigration laws. I do have problems with the way they have been enforced in some circumstances by some agents, but to say that there's no legitimate purposes or to call for the abolition of an entire agency based on some bad actors, as some of our elected officials locally unfortunately have done, I think is far too drastic. And I think that your long list of the sins of ICE in particular and Border Patrol in particular, which was lengthy and I think would be frankly more appropriate if we were members of Congress passing on ICE's budget or the existence of ICE. We're not, we're county legislators. But I think if I understood it, the gist of all that, that litany was that ICE agents are a potential harm to the citizens of Albany County, and we should keep them out of here. The fact of the matter is we're not going to keep federal law enforcement out of Albany County in the enforcement of federal immigration law. And in fact, if we follow the provisions of this particular proposal, by not confining their activities in the pursuit of illegal migrants with criminal backgrounds at the jail, we then force ICE to go out into the streets and into the community, which if you're so concerned about ICE being rogue and dangerous, why are you then setting them into the streets as opposed to being able to conduct their business, law enforcement to law enforcement, and not involve neighborhoods and innocent people. But generally speaking, I think My understanding was we moved away from these sort of urging resolutions that involve national policy, and I think we did that for a reason. And I think this particular measure has many of the notions that make those urging, that we found to be obnoxious in those urging resolutions. It's basically something we as legislators here have no power to affect. It's not within our scope. But I think this is even worse because it actually ties the execution of specific policing policies here in Albany County to things that may or may not happen 1,300 miles away, or based on events 1,300 miles away that may or may not occur and over which we have absolutely no control. So I think we should stick to our general policy of venting our frustrations, venting our concerns, sharing them, articulating them. But I don't think this particular measure is helpful, and I think in many cases I think it may wind up causing more harm than good.
Great, thanks. I'll just respond briefly. It's not an urging resolution in as much as it has operative language that would prevent, for example, the county sheriff from entering into agreements under Section 287G. I mean, that's a real policy that would be effectuated by the resolution. It isn't merely saying.
Well, that's what I say. It's actually, it has the obnoxious elements of an urging resolution, meaning it was stimulated by activities over which we have no control, but then it actually ties it to specific policies that would or would not be undertaken in Albany County, again, based on things over which we have no control.
Right.
So it's actually worse than an urging resolution.
And one of the changes that I did circulate would remove the resolve clause that ties the withdrawal or the extension of the resolution to events elsewhere, and just make it sort of simpler that the resolution will stay in place until it sunsets by a date specified or unless withdrawn or extended by the county legislature. And I've removed the things that would condition that upon events in other parts of the country in part to address that concern. Anybody else? Mr. Ricardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the discussion that we've had on this matter and the willingness to make some adjustments to this resolution. It really is appreciated. My focus has been on ensuring this remains grounded in Albany County's role and authority, of course. It's not exactly where I would have started with this, but it's in a better place, in my opinion. And I'm comfortable supporting it at this stage while continuing to review the final language as it moves forward. Thank you.
Thanks. Madam Chair?
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. First, I just want to compliment you. You are the drafter of this, Mr. Chair, and we're very lucky to have someone who is trained in the legal profession and is a practicing attorney. We're fortunate in our caucus to have several lawyers that are trained in the legal profession, and that really matters. And so we place a lot of trust in you, and I appreciate the good work, and I know you spent a lot of time on this, and I appreciate your opening statement, which was very meticulously laid out, so thank you for that. The other thing I would also note is that this has been reviewed by our law enforcement partners in the county, including the sheriff and including our district attorney's office, who are comfortable with this resolution. And then the final thing I would say is two things. One is it is not an urging resolution, as you rightly pointed out. This is a moment in time, and I think it is perfectly appropriate for the Albany County Legislature to take action on something like this and make our views known about where the line should be drawn. I also appreciate that it is well documented that the tactics of ICE have violated constitutional rights. So it's nice that we laud our constitutional rights, but they apply to everyone. And they're particularly important for people who are in vulnerable situations, but they still apply to them. So I appreciate the language that reminds us that that constitutional rights of individuals in the United States of America are being violated by ICE, and that is well documented. There have been congressional hearings about it, and a lot has been said about that. So I am glad to have the Albany County Legislature acting on this, and glad to support it and appreciate the good work that has been done.
Ms. Plonsky, did you have something to say?
I was gonna make a motion for a
Oh.
favorable recommendation, but.
Okay, Dr. McLaughlin, do you want to say something?
Thank you. I just returned from the National Association of County Officers meeting in DC, and there was a lot of conversation around immigration and ICE. And coming back, I am all the more committed to the fact that we have to say something. We have to put forward something. We have to show, as a legislature, that we've thought about this issue, and we're not just sitting and observing what other people are doing, but we actually have a strong opinion on it. And I appreciate the adjustments that you have made, you know, in the language here, and the comment, the resolved, the final paragraph on page 2, that this is where I stand. I mean, it's just all agents of Albany County, but not limited to the sheriff, will continue to comply with federal immigration laws, but will neither cooperate nor facilitate any operations of ICE or Border Patrol in Albany County, which prohibit cooperation and facilitation includes but is not limited to. And then you have the parameters here. So that is why I stand in support of this resolution. And I believe that, again, this gives me an opportunity to take a stand as a legislator and as a member of this body, because we certainly do, we can't sit by and just observe what other people are doing. We've got to say something. And if we don't, then to me, we're not showing that we have any resolve around this. And it's important whether we agree or disagree, even amongst ourselves. But it's important, there's conversations going on. I'm telling you, we sat down and talked with people, and people would tell, rather than have an opinion on it, people would sit down and say to us in the last few days, well, I haven't really been paying attention. Yes, you have. But rather than have an opinion, you told me, well, I'm not really sure. These are, because we would blatantly, and you all know my sister, Deputy Chair Wanda, she went up to people, what do you think about what's going on in Minnesota? And some of the answers we got, you would not believe it. But the one that really floored me was, I haven't really been paying attention. What? Don't tell me that. So we cannot be one to answering that question with, I haven't been paying attention. This resolution says we have been paying attention and we have an opinion, and we want the people in Albany County to know that this is where we stand. So I strongly support this, and thank you very much for all the work that you did to get us where we are today.
Thank you.
Can I ask one last question?
Briefly?
Yeah. This seems to have some conflicting sections. And I'm going to try to make them broad. And
Wait, I thought you said you had a question.
I do have a question.
Well, just ask your question.
Albany County will continue to comply with federal immigration laws. So that includes expedited deportations, which is federal immigration law. But you don't want to comply, you don't want to assist another law enforcement agency, which you have said we're going to comply with their immigration law. Which is it? Which is it? So go back to my other question. Because two ICE people can't go to the jail and get somebody, and that person gets released into the community, and they got to send somebody out to go through your neighborhood in Cohoes and create a problem that need not exist. And there's a problem, and those ICE officers are attacked. What are you going to tell your mayor to do? Is he going to support the police, or they're going to try to arrest them? What are they going to try to do? What's our county's law enforcement position? Do we support other agencies? Do we support federal law or not? because that's the essence of what's here. Now, you could wrap it up with different paper and put a different bow on it, because you don't like ice. I don't like some of the things that they did. But, you know, we here in New York, we got a 800-mile border with Canada, and people want to do away with ICE and Border Patrol? What are you saying? You want everyone to stream in to New York State because you don't support a border and you don't support deportation. So it really sort of comes down to that. Whose responsibility is it to enforce federal immigration law? And I don't, you've got two different.
Okay, Paul, you said you had a question.
I'm done.
Respectfully,
Yeah.
you don't know a lot about federal immigration law. You don't know what the law in New York State is with respect to local law enforcement's obligations when someone, I guess, has a administrative warrant for, you just, I'm not even gonna engage with it because you don't really know what you're talking about. Mr. Moriello, briefly,
Yes,
briefly.
in your narrative, you were talking about the training of agents.
Yeah.
And kind of interesting, because I'm on the Homeland Security website, and I'm just going to read very little of this, just a little bit. Madam Chair, 3 minutes at the most. The headline here is DHS sets the record straight about ICE law enforcement training debunks falsehoods. It says here, no training requirements have been removed. It's the same hours of training officers have always received. Despite false claims from media, no training hours have been cut. Our officers receive extensive firearm training, are taught de-escalation tactics, and receive Fourth and Fifth Amendment comprehensive instruction. The training does not stop after graduation from the academy. Recruits are put on a rigorous on-the-job training program that is tracked and monitored. DHS has streamlined training to cut redundancy and incorporate technology advancements without sacrificing basic subject matter content. No subject matter has been cut, and let's see.
I mean, Mr.
That's
Moriello,
about it.
if you're
So
just,
what
you
I'm
just
doing
wanted
is
to
I'm just
read what
reading
the
to you from
DHS's
the
response
website,
was.
so what they're saying.
Okay.
So and your opinion was their training is lacking based on what they're saying on their website. They feel they're.
Well, that's fine. I think that the Department of Homeland Security's credibility is at an all-time low. And I take anything they say with an enormous grain of salt, as I think
It still
you
is the
should.
official Department of Homeland Security.
Okay, thank you. I think that's everything, yes.
Appreciate the updates that were made to the language, given that this was written shortly after the events in Minnesota. But given the continued efforts by ICE nationally, I'd like to suggest some additional language in the 10th whereas clause, very, very brief, in the second line.
Where does it start?
With, whereas the members of the Albany County Legislature stand in solidarity with the people of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and rather than Minnesota generally, if we could instead insert cities across the country that have been invaded by ICE.
Where's this?
It's on the middle of the second page.
You really have to
Under the
do
red-
it.
It's
under the red-
immediately after
the next
the
paragraph.
two whereas clauses that were stricken in red currently.
And what cities have been invaded by ICE?
Portland, Los Angeles, to name two.
Aren't there law enforcement people working with ICE?
No.
Okay,
No, they're not. They're protesting, actually,
Well, no. there
okay,
were
okay,
always
stop,
protests.
stop.
as we are.
Okay. So that's your motion?
Yes.
To strike what?
To strike Minnesota generally
So strike
and
Minneapolis.
insert cities across the country that have been invaded by ICE.
Right.
At the time that this was written, it was immediately after the events in Minnesota. We've stricken some of those clauses and
I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. Strike at Minneapolis,
Yeah.
go to Minnesota and say cities that have been.
So you
invaded.
take out all the
Start
names.
the strike would be Minneapolis generally, 2 words out, replacing that with cities across the country that have been invaded by ICE.
Okay, all right, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna do this in two two buckets. First of all, there are whether you support it or not, I'm moving to amend the resolution to reflect the red lines that are in the version I passed around. Let's do that first. I'm making that motion to change the resolution with those changes. Can I have a second for those proposed changes? Ms. Plotsky, okay. All in favor of the changes in the red line? Aye.
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 Did you vote?
Oh, you didn't say yet. You haven't called for the nays yet.
Oh, I see, I'm sorry. Any opposed?
Waiting
You're right.
patiently.
Yep. Any opposed?
Yes.
No.
No.
Yeah,
I oppose.
I'm opposed
Got
to
it.
the amendment, because
Got
the
it,
amendment
got it, got
also
it.
adds 2 years
Okay,
to
got
this
it.
law.
Got it. Now, we have Peto's proposed amendments. I'm gonna not support those because, well, I tried to calibrate this back a little bit, and I'm afraid that some of those will just kind of go in the other direction. So if it's all right, I'm gonna not vote in support of those of your proposed amendments. But there's
Which direction? I'm sorry.
well, I'm not gonna support those proposed amendments for,
It was just an effort to make it consistent with the withdrawal of the last amendment to this. If not, that's fine, Jeff, I can,
okay. Are you gonna withdraw that then?
yeah.
Oh, and I guess technically it would have to be in writing also, I'm being
Yeah,
told by the
yeah,
parliamentarian.
no, I will withdraw
Okay.
them and, yeah.
Okay,
As long as
thanks.
it's adequately
Okay,
discussed.
so now can I have a motion for, no, what do we do? Favorable recommendation? All right, so I'm gonna move for a favorable recommendation for the resolution as amended.
I'll second it.
All right, Mr. Ricard, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great, thanks. Okay, thank you, everybody, for that robust and frank discussion. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is item 6, a resolution of the County of Albany, New York, prohibiting the use of public funds for the purpose of doing business with airlines engaged in deportation flights. I'll try to make this brief. This is basically what we're saying with this resolution. We've had people come in and talk to us. For those airlines that choose to facilitate the operations of ICE and sort of deprivations of constitutional rights and all of the problematic activities of ICE, for airlines that choose to participate in that by doing deportation flights, contracting with Department of Homeland Security or ICE to do deportation flights. We, as Albany County, will basically just not do business with those airlines. Our employees will not fly on those airlines for official business, and we also won't do any partnerships with those airlines for promotional events or advertising or co-branding. What this doesn't do is, and because we do not have the authority to do it, it doesn't in any way evict any airlines from the Albany County International Airport. We don't have the authority to do that, and so we're not even talking about that. All we're talking about is if an airline chooses to profit from this line of business, we, as is our right, as a county, just will not do business with that particular airline. That is what this resolution is about, and with that, I'll open it up to questions or comments. Not seeing any. Oh, Mr.
Sorry.
Bergdorf?
Sorry, first of all, I have to disclose that I have been a regular user of Avello Airlines extensively, and now I use Breeze Airlines extensively since Avello stopped having a direct flight to a city that I'm interested in. I've got to, I'm going to oppose this for what in my mind are philosophical grounds. I don't believe that we as a county should be banishing anyone from a legal activity. A legal activity. You know, it's probably the difference between socialism and capitalism. In capitalism, if you don't like what Bud Light did with Dylan Mulvaney, you decide not to buy Bud Light. And when 50% of your base goes away, you get a message as a corporation, but everybody makes an individual decision. It seems that there are other philosophies that say, I know better than you, and I have decided that you have no right to do business with this company. And that company isn't even doing that business anymore. Then you compound that with the concept that one person is going to create a list. No criteria as to what's in the list. How do you get on the list? How do you get off the list? Is there a method to get yourself off the list? No. One person creates a list, and Albany County ceases to do business with a business. You know, we are enmeshed in national politics, and if we go down this road, there are lots of other national political things that could come up that are very uncomfortable to deal with, and nobody has chosen to try to make this county deal with them. For example, if there are 20 people in the legislature who thinks that Israel has a right to exist, you know, we have provisions in our procurement law that say if you don't abide by the McBride principles, if you don't agree to Iranian divestiture, you can't do business with the county. Well, maybe we shouldn't be giving grants to organizations unless they sign an affidavit that they don't buy into the BDS concepts of trying to bankrupt Israel. You know, so if 20 people do that, 20 people can support that, we're going to do that. And everybody will have to decide whether or not they want to support Israel or not. Nassau County did a law that said nobody in Nassau County can sponsor a sporting event that has transgender individuals in the county facility. It's found legal, found constitutional. It's happening. Do we want to do that here with the MVP and our hockey arena and that sort of thing? Is that how we're going to start making our decisions for Albany County based on national polarizing issues? I don't think we should. But if we're going to start doing stuff like this, there are other things that maybe this legislature should be considering that will be unpleasant for people to consider. And I just think we're putting a lot of time and effort into something that we really don't control. I mean, I did a lot of investigation on Avello. Everybody says they didn't have a contract with the federal government. Did you know that? Federal government had a contract with an airline umbrella group that then subcontracted out to various airlines around the country. Do you have any of those provisions in here? What happens if American Airlines decides that they're going to sell tickets to 50 people from the Justice Department who are going out to do ICE enforcement in a particular area? Are we going to ban American Airlines and nobody can do business with American Airlines? Because they are certainly facilitating deportations through the use of the federal compliance with the immigration law. Where does this end? And I realize this is, oh my goodness, you know, there are certain people that have state laws in here, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And you know, there's a great pressure to show that you can do it locally. But is this the road we want to go down? I hope not. So I'm voting no, and I think it's ill-advised. And I don't, this is as
That is
someone's-
your 5 minutes.
Okay.
So, before you move on to something else.
Um,
Ms. Plotsky.
Let's see, I just wanted to make sure that the language encompasses airlines that subcontracted for the flights. Yeah, that Avella was not in direct contractual relationship with ICE. So I want to make sure the language is sufficient to include that operate any deportation flights. Do we need the language that follows that?
Well, that's just
Just something to think of.
for us.
What if American Airlines?
Hold it, Paul, you're not.
Well, you know, you just don't want to understand the nuances of this. I'm sorry.
Your time is up. I mean, you can't filibuster. Okay. So your question, Ms. Plotsky,
Let's see, page 2 of 2, the third paragraph. It says, travel on airlines that operate any deportation flights chartered or contracted by, et cetera. Since Avella was a subcontractor, is that encompassed under this language?
well, wouldn't contracted by encompass that?
I would think so, but I just wanted to bring that up to make sure that you're confident that it would include.
Well, if
Subcontract.
if events required us at some point to tweak the language to encompass
Okay.
various exotic contractual arrangements, we could always do that.
Okay.
Thank you for that, though.
I mean, how many county employees are flying on business? I mean, this is not a typical occurrence, correct?
I don't have the answer to that particular question, but I don't disagree with your kind of, yeah, probably not a lot.
Chick-fil-A on the way.
Well, Carolyn just did. Flying to DC.
I gotcha.
Yeah, moving on America.
Mr. Purley?
First, a question, Mr. Chairman, then a statement, I guess. First, a question, I guess, for the sponsor. If a illegal immigrant, or illegal migrant sexually assaulted or raped a University of Albany undergraduate and was deported on an American airline flight out of Albany, would this apply to American Airlines?
So, well, I don't, what is the sort of inflammatory,
That's not
criminal
inflammatory,
element have to do with it?
It happened in Georgia. If what happened in Georgia last year happened in Albany next year, and we had a person here illegally, who in that case murdered, but in my hypothetical, less inflammatory than what actually happened, raped an undergraduate at SUNY Albany, and was deported on an American Airlines flight out of Albany, would Ms. McLaughlin be prohibited from using American Airlines for county flight?
Well, it's for, the resolution specifically says it applies to airlines that engage in charter flights solely for the purpose of deportation. So your hypothetical where it's a single individual wouldn't apply to this, it wouldn't apply here. It's for chartered deportation flights.
And that would apply to Ms. Plotsky's clarification as well? So,
I think so.
Okay. I guess my problem with this particular measure isn't necessarily the conclusion, it's more how you got to the whereases, which I found to be unnecessarily inflammatory. Particularly the one, whereas the Albany County Legislature believes that those who participate in or condone the aforementioned tactics, yada yada, of ICE, shall not be supported by Albany County's taxpayer funds. So if the owner of the across the street pub puts up a sign saying, "I'm pro-ICE," would we, condoning the agency, would we not be able to have a retirement party using county funds at the across the street pub? If a sheriff's deputy has a yard sign on his front yard saying, I support ICE, would we not be able to pay him with taxpayer funds because he's condoning the activities listed in your whereas clauses? My problem is,
Did you want an answer to those questions, or were they rhetorical?
well, yeah, an answer.
No, it wouldn't apply to any of those scenarios.
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, not, obviously not, because it doesn't involve a flight, but the overall statement, we will not condone. The legislature will not condone, or will not, believes that those who condone those activities or support those activities shall not be supported with taxpayer funds. So is that the principle we're supporting if we vote in the affirmative on this? That if someone supports ICE, they cannot be supported by taxpayer funds?
No.
That, to me, that's blacklisting, that's McCarthyism. Right? So a sheriff's deputy who has a yard sign that says, I support ICE, is condoning ICE's activity, and it is the belief of the legislature, if this is approved, it is the belief of the legislature that that person should not be supported by Albany County's taxpayer funds.
Well, I will answer that. I mean, there are specific tactics that are referred to in here that are unconstitutional. And it's a business that's a specific airline businesses that support those unconstitutional tactics by engaging in charter flights. We're talking about a very specific type of support of very identified unconstitutional.
If your end result is so
Hold on,
specific, why are your whereases so generally
Well,
inflammatory?
I don't think they are. I mean, I disagree with your assertion that the whereases are.
I'll stop by saying, I cannot support a measure that says the Albany County Legislature believes that those who condone the tactics and activities of ICE should not be supported by Albany County
Well,
taxpayers.
just to be clear, it says the aforementioned tactics and activities of ICE. It's not general, it's very specific.
I think you're splitting hairs, and I think what I don't want the county to get involved in is basically the blacklisting and in our desire to virtue signal, basically blacklist political positions that perhaps 30 to 40% of the county supports. Right? And again, I don't necessarily have a problem with the end result of this resolution. I just don't understand why it has to be clothed in all these whereases that are just so inflammatory. I appreciate the indignation of certain legislators who feel very passionately about this. But I think you also have to appreciate that there's a lot of people in the county that see it the other way and don't necessarily want to be tarred or blacklisted for their political views. With that, I'll pass.
Anybody else? Mr. Moriello.
Are we aware now of any airlines that are servicing Albany that are transporting migrants?
On the charter flights reference?
Charter flights that?
Well, there are
Doesn't matter.
no.
Any airline servicing Albany?
It is my understanding that there are currently no airlines that would satisfy the definition of a deportation airline right now.
Okay, all right.
So it's more of a forward-looking, don't do it.
Okay, here's my opinion, and I'll be really, really brief about this. We should be we're gonna spend time and energy now researching these airlines and coming up with a list of maybe finding an airline that transports migrants. Maybe. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But we're gonna expend the time and energy. Our jobs here as the legislators is to govern the county, not worry about and get into national politics. I view this as a resolution in search of a problem. There's no issue. We're just making a statement is all we're doing. So, I mean, when it comes to voting on this on the floor, I'll be voting. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right, can I have a motion to make this out the favorable recommendation? Ms. Plaza. Second? Ready? Ms. Leary. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? 2. Okay, did you get to a vote?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. With that, that brings us to the end of our agenda. I have a motion to adjourn. In favor? Great.